outcome goals become the only thing we've been taught to focus on. What we really want to try and focus on is putting the outcome goals to the background and breaking it down into smaller goals, performance goals and process goals. Focusing on process goals have the highest likelihood of achieving your outcome goals.
Welcome to Second Story, everybody. I'm Josh Cybulski, joined as always by Leckie. Corey, how are things?
Things are fine, Josh. Just fine.
Yeah, I'm also fine. We're joined today by a returning guest. He is Matt Barnes of Southwest Counselling. Matt, how are things?
Things are really fine over here, Josh. Thanks for asking.
Exceptionally fine. That's wonderful.
We're allowed to be one of two things. We're allowed to be mad or fine. That's it.
Last time that Matt joined us, we played a clip from Bill Burr's stand-up where he talks about how men are allowed to be one of two things. They can either be mad or they can be fine.
How you doing, Bill? I'm fine. You sure? Yeah, I'm sure. I said I was fine. Why the f*** would I say it's fine? And you just
and all of us today are incredibly fine. So there you go. Corey, you want to kick things off?
Matt, we really enjoyed having you on the last episode, and we got a lot of good feedback on it too, as far as our talk on men's mental health. But you do another aspect to your job, which is sports performance and mental performance for high performers, such as like businesses and that kind of thing. So I thought it'd be cool to have you on and talk about that, because what I find is I've got all these great ideas for my business, and I tend to jump into them, 2 feet, and I'm going after the idea, but then I find my consistency sort of drops off and the discipline drops off after a while. So I'm hoping that we can kind of get some insights from you around that.
We can definitely do that, and I'll just bill you at the end of the podcast.
Perfect.
Yeah, Bill Corey.
Okay.
Same hourly rate as 10 years ago, right?
Yes, exactly. You got some funds in the Patreon account though, right?
Oh yeah. No, we're loaded. We got millions of viewers. It's all good.
Yeah, we're good.
So yeah, I think that's a great point, Corey, that you bring up, and I think that's really common where we have these big goals, and we're going steady, and then over time things start to fall off: discipline, motivation, focus. And so we could talk about some strategies for that, I think, on this episode. And maybe before that, just kind of set the stage of what mental performance consulting is and kind of what that's all about. And it's really rooted in sports psychology, which we could look at like the science of success. And a lot of sports psychology is rooted in researching the best athletes in the world. And the first athlete that was ever kind of hooked up into a lab was Babe Ruth in the early 1920s at Columbia University. And they really wanted to know, like, what's the deal with this guy? Why is he hitting so many home runs? Why is he such a freak? And so that was the first athlete that was ever studied. And obviously that's just, the field has grown so much since then. Spoiler alert with Babe Ruth, he was just a really gifted human being. So they found in these lab tests that he could hear, I think it was 12 times faster than the average human. His sight was quicker. His brain processed sensory information a lot faster than the average Joe. And so some people are just naturally gifted like that physically. But sports psychology, the field is really, it's really about how you can build your mental skills to be the best at whatever you're doing, and to hit peak performance levels, to achieve flow states, to be able to combat adversity, stress, mistakes. Those can really derail performances. And the field is growing so much. And the Olympics is really what I think we can credit sports psych for developing so much, because the early 1900s, we have all these countries competing to be the best, and so naturally, because we're all very competitive, We want to be the best at in these competitions. So there's some resources, some funding going into looking at, okay, what are some strategies we can use? What are maybe some things around sleep or nutrition, or what can the mind help us accomplish here? So that's, the Olympics, and then starting to study athletes in laboratories. Kind of brings us to where we are now, where mental performance consulting is really infiltrated pretty much every area, from business to the military to entertainment to any sports sports venue, and across really from professional leagues all the way down to minor midget 14-year-old hockey players. We're really seeing the benefit of how this can help people, not just in sports and performance, but just in life in general.
I have kind of a random question out of that. Has it infiltrated politics yet? It's a serious question. I noticed that was conspicuously absent from the list, so I'm curious.
That's a good question. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. And when you think about some of the psychological tactics that politicians take, I think that would be a pretty appropriate place for psychology to show up.
Yeah. Big time. I don't know yeah. Okay. All right.
I don't have any firsthand information on that, but maybe on our next episode I could report back to you.
Yeah. No, I'm really curious about that, because obviously that's a place where it probably should be, especially even the idea of performance, right? You think about, I can think back to Obama, when Obama was going through a lot of the stuff with trying to capture Saddam Hussein, or they didn't capture him, but just I remember reading about the hours that he would keep, and how he wouldn't eat and he wouldn't sleep and all these things, and it's just awful things for your body, because I guess whatever, that was his mission at the time. But thinking about the levels of stress that so these people would be under, that sort of thing, they definitely should have a performance coach if they don't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to correct do a little performance correcting here. So it wasn't Saddam Hussein, it was Osama bin Laden. But
did I not say Osama bin Laden?
No, you said Saddam Hussein.
Did I? All right, yeah. Well, that was Bush.
He was long dead.
Yeah. Well, so they say.
But definitely the military, those Navy SEALs teams, those special ops teams, would have some mental skills built into their programming. And there's some cool videos you can find, fighter pilots doing visualization, certainly teaching them relaxation strategies, how to keep their heart rate low, and just calm and focused in those life and death situations.
That brings up an interesting point. You talk about soldiers and things like that. A lot of the tactics that get used for torture are things like sleep deprivation, hunger, the lack of water, that sort of thing. And when we do get into stressful moments or pursuits of something, we sort of torture ourselves by not doing those things, which I've never really thought about. But I know so many times where I just have not slept or not eaten or not stopped and gotten water because I'm in hot pursuit of something, and you are torturing yourself. You're not going to get peak performance when you're doing that to yourself.
Yeah, that's a great point. And when you said torture yourself, it made me think of self-talk too, and how much we torture ourselves with negative self-talk, especially after maybe making a mistake or having a bad performance outing, whatever area you're working in.
Maybe we can jump into a bit of specifics, because I know your main focus has been sports. So what do you see from the teams as far as that, as far as trying to find that focus or trying to find that ability to perform and not have that negative self-talk?
Can I jump into a couple things before we get to the self-talk, just to kind of set that up?
You can do whatever you want, man. It's your show.
Yeah. All right. Because I think it's important, when I'm working with teams or individuals, I like to start a little bit more zoomed out than jumping into those mental skills like self-talk and focus and goal setting. I think it's good to start with just the identity. So if it's a team, what's the identity of this team or an individual? And that, one of the greatest exercises for discovering that and developing that, I think, is a values exercise. So what are the core values going to be for this team or for yourself? And if you just Google values lists, like you can get these, 200 to 300 word lists, and then you just start the process of kind of weeding out which ones don't make sense for us. So if it's a team, um, oftentimes the core values are around hard work, discipline, teamwork, passion, right? Togetherness. Um, Individually, this could range. Like maybe you have core values around adventure, and that's going to kind of set you up for your videography business to want to do some more traveling or something with your work, right? Or maybe it's family or faith or stability, right? There's a lot of places you can go, but I think it's really important to try and narrow it down to kind of 4 or 5 core values to help guide you. And values are really just beliefs that guide your actions. So we need to start with a belief system. What are we, and what are we out to do here? And so starting with values, core values, then I think having a philosophy is really important. And especially for hitting adversity, because we know whatever, if it's a season, a hockey season, we know we're going to hit some slumps. We know we're going to have some rough times, some injuries, some losses. If it's a business, there's going to be ups and downs with the economy, with your own stuff you have going on in your own life. So having a philosophy for life, I think, is really helpful. And some people already have this naturally. So this might be Christianity for some people, right? Things get hard and it's like, this is God's plan. Or maybe you're more aligned with like Buddhism, which really kind of welcomes the suffering. Like there's no joy without suffering, right? So when you hit those slumps, you can kind of fall back on this philosophy, this way of thinking. I think Stoicism fits really nicely in here. And, Stoicism talks a lot about adversity and welcoming it. And that's how we're going to grow and develop. So I think in my mind, that's important. Is early on, we want to kind of figure out what's our identity, what are our core values, and what's our philosophy for the hard times. And I think that can really set a good foundation.
When you're working with a team, then do you take them individually and try to figure out those values, or is it kind of like as a whole they're deciding on those values together?
Yeah, I've done this a couple different ways. I think the simplest way I've done it is I give the coaches the big list, the 200 to 300 values, and I have them narrow it down to their top 15. And then we just do a vote among the players. So
Okay.
whichever values aligns the most with the team, we'll go with those 5.
Do you ever find that individuals' values don't align with the teams, so dramatic or so dramatically different that it becomes a problem?
Haven't had that. Like with the team, those individual values can kind of get parked when you're working with the team. Like they can have both, right? But this is our identity as a team. You can still have your own, and it's important to have your own identity individually, but we want to be all on the same page with our team values.
Can I ask a follow-up?
You may.
Have you ever had that with a business? Somebody working in a business?
I've done this exercise with a few businesses, and I've had a little bit of conflict where the values that they picked did not really represent reality for them.
For the individual, you mean, or for the business?
For the team, for the business.
Okay.
So like an example would be accountability is the core value, but maybe the manager doesn't do a whole lot of managing, doesn't hold himself accountable, doesn't hold others accountable.
Yeah. So the reason I asked this is because I think Corey and I have started to move into a spot with our audience where a lot of people who watch this show are people who are kind of trying to escape like corporate culture or the idea of working for somebody else, and they're they have the the entrepreneurial spirit, kind of like we all do. And I think that there is a real collision of identities there between the business and the individual that I know for me has been very difficult, and I know a lot of people it's a very difficult thing, and they don't really know how to navigate it. So that's why I ask, because I think it is becoming more and more common in our society.
And I think just the process of organizations, teams coming up with their core values, there's a lot of disconnect there, right? We've got, and that's why I like to do this with every team at the start of the year, rather than like, here's our organization's core values, they're written on the wall, and you just have to kind of embody those when maybe those don't fit.
Yeah, it's almost like a bit of a religion. Like here's our book of what we believe as a collective. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So you have to come in and believe it, whether you believe it or not.
And I think when you I think when you go through the process of having a bit of ownership over what the values are, like I know it's just a vote, but that still gives you a sense of, I had a part in coming up with this. And ownership really helps you to live that and to take action and represent those values. So I want everybody to have a piece in developing those core values for the team or individually.
Yeah.
And having conversations like, what does this mean? What does accountability mean? What would that look like to show and live that core value? And you go deeper into it, right? Because accountability, you look at it and it's like, yeah, we all know what accountability is, but what is, like, on the day to day, what does it look like? What are some examples of it? And then you have deeper conversations and people have a better understanding of it.
Yeah. And I think if you brought up a list of, 200 values or whatever, I'm pretty sure most people could look at the list and go, okay, I can get on board with pretty much most of these things, because values tend to be a positive thing. Like they're not usually like some negative that you're trying to attach yourself. I think what Josh was getting at, though, is there's times when corporations will kind of assign values that just don't make sense or don't really align with most people, but they do sort of get forced down your throat when you're in those environments.
Yeah, well, I would say it kind of plays back to an earlier episode that Corey and I did about luxury beliefs. There is a real disconnect between what people who are higher up in a corporation might believe a priority is versus somebody who's just like your average worker. Simply because like your average worker is going to look at much smaller problems as being a real problem, or much simpler things as being an accountability, versus somebody who's maybe living in a bubble or quite wealthy. Their belief system is going to be something that they may, I'm trying to think of the nicest way to put this. They might impart on somebody who's maybe a little bit in a lower rung of society. And the person who's well off or well to do might do this because they don't actually pay anything for this. There's no price for them, but they can put the price on somebody else and look virtuous at the same time. So I think there is a real disconnect in our society where that's happening quite often. And I think it sort of plays into identity, because like a lot of wealthy people that I do know, have an identity wrapped around being this virtuous person. Like they really care what other people think of them. And I think everybody does to some extent, but wealthy people tend to have more eyes on them. So I think it's more important for them than somebody who's just, some poor schmuck working in a factory who nobody really cares about.
I think we're also talking about leadership here too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That'd be a big part of it.
And that's something that mental performance consultants can help with, and work with teams and work with coaches and CEOs to develop their leadership styles. And that's a big piece of performance. And those low rung staff or players, it's important for them to feel valued and like they're a part of the team, they belong, and not to feel so disconnected. That's where you're going to see a lot of performance problems, when there's this huge gap between CEO and frontline worker.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's often a disconnect too from the top, where you've come up with these values that you say, okay, this is what we're all going to collectively do. But then the expectation is the higher ups don't necessarily have to do it. They're like, no, we want the team to do it, but we can kind of go outside and skirt outside of those values, but tell you to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So have you ever found that in the work that you've done?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and it always breaks down. Like they never achieve those peak performance levels when there's a situation like that. Because there's not cohesion. We don't have a shared vision, shared goals. So we can't
Right.
perform optimally.
Do you think, like with the people that you have worked with, do you think most people actually have a sense of identity? Or do you think that a lot of people are kind of looking for it?
It's a great question. I think everyone has a sense of identity, but I think most people haven't actually thought about it. And they need maybe some help or some guidance on how to explore that further, how to really get in touch with it, how to like put words to it.
Yeah.
And like we talked on the last episode about men, right? And like what is a man? So probably we could give that value list to men, and they might just naturally circle family as a core value because
Yeah.
that's what's been ingrained in us that we should value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But maybe they have other values. Maybe there's other things they're not exploring or doing because they haven't kind of zoomed out and really looked at, okay, what society told me I should value, and what do I actually value? And sometimes there's a lot of conflict there.
I had a conversation around identity with a couple of friends of mine, I don't know, maybe a month ago. And we were all just like, I think I know what my identity is, but one of my friends was like really lost. He's like, I don't know what my identity is. And one of my other buddies was like, well, you're a father and you're a husband and you work at this. And my buddy was like, I don't think that's my identity though. He said, I'm directly quoting him. He's like, I think my identity is who I am when no one's watching. And when no one's watching, I'm not a father. I'm not a husband. I'm just me. And I don't know what that is. And I was like, ooh, that's really an interesting thing, because I think a lot of people would, if no one's watching them, and like they probably don't know who they are.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's pretty introspective of him, though, to say that, because you're right. Like most people would just go, "Oh, I identify as this job," or I'm a father and that kind of thing. But they're not really thinking more deeply about how many outside influences are affecting who you think you are versus who you actually are when nobody's around. And I think as we kind of get older, like I've found anyways, when gotten into my 40s, I've been trying to get back to that person that I was before. Like almost I want to be that person that's alone, but outwardly in front of everyone else, and just, this is who I am. And if you like it, awesome. If you don't, sorry, see you later.
Yeah.
Well, and I think this is interesting and it's deep. And my perspective on it is, we have a lot of parts of the self, parts of our personality. So yeah, we are dads, we are workers, we are brothers. And each of those parts can have their own beliefs and attitudes and actions and ways of being. And I'll talk about this sometimes with athletes. Like, you're an athlete here and you act and believe and are a certain way here. But then when you go home to your billet family or hang out with your girlfriend or you're at school, another part of you is activated there. And I always found it really confusing when I was in high school, before I had any concept of this, of how when I was with my buddies, I'd be a certain way, and with my girlfriend a certain way. But then when we were all together, it was like I didn't know how to be. It's like, can I make fart jokes, or am I supposed to be romantic, or like how do all these parts of me kind of collide right now?
Worlds are colliding. It's the Seinfeld bit.
And I think these different parts of us too can have their own little identities and their own values. Like maybe the athlete is relentless and super disciplined, and maybe part of his role is like an enforcer and an instigator, right? But then when he's with his wife or his girlfriend, he can be soft and caring and empathetic and loving. So I think this, to your friend's point, like who are we? And it takes some time and work and focus to really dive into all these parts of the self.
Yeah. I think identity crisis is a really common thing. Like, I know for me, it's been a common thing in various parts of my life, but I think a lot of people, especially now, like given what's happened over the last few years, I think a lot of people have had a lot of time to sit with it and be like, who am I really?
Mm-hmm.
And you wonder how much of it is like what they are, like at their core, what they were born as, versus like what's an inherited identity, like what's kind of been put on them that they've sort of just accepted as that's who I am. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there, but it's an interesting thing to think about.
I think, like the last few years, like there's been a lot of transitions, a lot of new ways of living. I think about athletes, like when athletes retire, they go through a whole identity transformation and change and crisis for some. And they say athletes die twice, once like the rest of us, and the other one when they retire from their sport. So there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of change, a lot of evolving that happens through these different states of being and living and transitions in life.
I think the same could be said too for career, right? Because you do tend to find a lot of identity in your business or in your I know a lot of people that have worked in jobs for like 35 years or whatever, and they find a lot of identity in that. And then once they retire, it's like, what do I do? What am I? Like, I've just been this other thing for so long that
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
So common. Yeah, and when for entrepreneurs, like your business becomes like a child to you. And then if
Mm-hmm.
you sell it or you move on or you change careers like that, there's a loss there. There's grief that we have to
Mm-hmm.
process.
Yeah. I think parents go through it too when their kids go to school or move out.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bit of an identity because you've been a parent for however long, 18, 20, maybe 35 years when our kids get out. but I'm sure there's going to be an identity crisis that we feel where we're like, oh, I don't have to handhold anymore. Like what am I now? What am I left with?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people probably feel the same thing with divorce too. Like I was a wife or I was a husband and now I'm not. That's a kind of a loss of identity, I guess.
Yeah, I think the easiest entry point into identity is to look at the roles that you play in your life.
Hmm.
I think that's a
Oh,
great
that's a good way to put
segue.
it. Yeah.
So we're talking about, high performers. So we'd be exploring their role as an athlete, or if it's a team, their role as a teammate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for you guys, the role of businessman or an entrepreneur, um, and what goes into that. And so we talked about core values. We talked about having a philosophy, and then I think goals are a big topic. And Corey, you kind of opened up with goals.
Mm-hmm.
We learn about SMART goals in school, which is great, but we don't learn that there's actually kind of three categories of goals. And this comes from the sports psych field. So I'm sure that maybe there's other ways of putting this, but the big goals, the dreams, the Stanley Cups, the $1 million revenue, those are called outcome goals. So those are like, the ribbons, the trophies, the things that we want to achieve at the end. So for you, Corey, I'm not sure what you said you were setting some goals and kind of falling off, but maybe you could share like what was your outcome goal?
Well, a good outcome goal for a business would be money.
Yes.
Lots and lots of money.
Okay.
That'd be a good one.
So some financial goals. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
there's some numbers in mind that you had. So
Mm-hmm.
those are really, really important to have. We wouldn't be able to focus if we didn't have those outcome goals. But the problem is, and this is a problem with society, problem with how we've been taught to set goals, is outcome goals become the only thing we've been taught to focus on.
Mm.
And you go on social media and everybody's posting their outcome goals, the achieving them, right? The big trophy, the championship, the whatever. So what happens when that's all we focus on is we lose steam so quickly when we're not achieving that goal. And those goals can be year long goals to
Mm.
achieve that. So what we really want to try and focus on is putting the outcome goals to the background and breaking it down into smaller goals. So then we have a category called performance goals and process goals. And I'm just going to talk about process goals because I think they're the most important. And the research shows that process goals have um, focusing on process goals have the highest likelihood of achieving your outcome goals. So if you can put all of your energy and time into your process goals, the chance of succeeding and achieving those big financial goals is going to be higher than if you just focused on the big outcome goals. Process
Okay.
goals are basic. These are, what am I doing day in and day out that's going to get me closer to my end goals, my outcome goals. So this could be, if they're financial goals, this is going to be, I'm going to make 5 cold calls a day, or I'm going to post, three reels a week to try and target this ideal client, right? Or I'm going to do, my twice a week business coaching to keep me focused, keep me on track. So these are the things that we're doing every day. And then once you sort of figure out, okay, like what are the things that are going to get me the outcomes, then you just start penciling those in to your schedule. So if it's the 5 cold calls, I'm going to do that, every day before 10 a.m. And then you have a level of accountability. You have that, right? Your day is already sorted out for you in terms of how you're going to kick it off. And so it helps with structure. It helps with your routine. It helps with keeping you focused. And motivation is going to ebb and flow 100%. Motivation comes and goes, and there's things that we can do with that, but we really want to come back to the process goals as much as we can.
I often find, so you were talking about like, let's set, maybe a time frame that I'm going to call leads or whatever. I often find like I set up these scheduled things that I'm going to do, and then something else pops in and I have to like get that done. And it pushes the other thing out that was arguably the more important thing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but you do this other thing that you're like, okay, I can get this done quickly, or it popped into my email, so I gotta get that done. What do you what do you suggest for that as far as like time management?
I'd say, like, to me, it's similar to your health goals and just having non-negotiable tasks that you do. Like for you, I know going to the gym every morning, that's non-negotiable for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think your cold calling should be a non-negotiable if you're trying to build your book of business or grow your portfolio. So it's really identifying like what are the things that are going to move the needle towards my financial goals the most, and just prioritizing those, and just they're not things that you cancel or change, just like your gym appointments.
Okay.
I wonder if we could tie what you're talking about to what Corey's talking about. Do you think a lot of people do that because they see them as quick wins, little dopamine hits? Get this task done, I'll feel good because I'll feel productive.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that kind of ties in with people seeing that as not necessarily a process goal, but like a process accomplishment, I suppose?
Yeah, I think so for sure. There's, some of these process goals, they're not very sexy. They
Mm-hmm.
don't, right? They don't feel great. Like who wants to do a bunch of cold calls and get rejected, 8 out of 10
Yeah.
times, right? So those things, and then you could even look into what are the things that I'm pushing off. Maybe there's some common threads there, right? Maybe it is rejection that you're avoiding. Or maybe this putting out this reel and getting all these likes on Instagram gives you that quick dopamine hit. You know, if you
Yeah.
want to, if you want to divulge a bit more, Corey, maybe we could really get in that head of yours.
I don't know what I would divulge. Like, I do find I I've got these, kind of list of things that, okay, I'm gonna do this, 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 and this, and then yeah, some little thing pops up, and I'll tend, and I think it is what Josh is saying. Like, I think I do it because it's like feeling of accomplishment. Okay, I got that done. I got that done. I checked that off the list. But at the end of the day, you're not moving the needle with those things.
Mm-hmm.
There could be a slight bit of self sabotage in there too.
Could
Yeah.
be. It does feel good to tick things off for sure. But
Off the checklist, yeah.
yeah, and that's a little hack you can do for the shitty things you don't want to do, right? Makes a bunch of tick boxes to tick off once you do them. But yeah,
Mhm.
maybe there's something else getting in the way. Maybe you're afraid of failure, or maybe there's some other things there, which I think a lot of people are.
Maybe I'm afraid of success.
Mm,
I sometimes
Or
wonder that.
yeah.
there's
Honestly.
you know what? There is this chart. I forget what the chart is called, but it does compare performance and level of stress.
Optimal zone of arousal.
Yes, 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 yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it does compare, like, you've got your performance and then you've got your level of stress, and on the left I think is comfort zone, and it's like boredom.
It's an
um
inverted U. So basically your
yes, yeah, yeah,
performance, low stress, low arousal. So like you just wake up in the morning, right? You're just opening your eyes. If you tried to perform a task, business, sports, whatever it is, your performance level will be low.
yeah,
Same with if your stress or arousal is too high, right? You're super anxious, panicky, million thoughts going through your head if you try and
yeah.
perform. So it's like this inverted U somewhere in the middle. We have an optimal zone of stress or optimal zone of arousal where we perform at our peak.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the growth, and I mean, it's growth and learning, right? That's where you want to be, somewhere in that zone. You don't want to be burned out, or I think
Yes.
breakdown is on the right hand side, like in the distress zone.
Yeah, that's such a valuable tool, just that alone. And understanding, okay, I'm too stressed right now, I'm too aroused. Okay, then it's simple, right? All I need to do is use relaxation strategies. Or
Yeah.
maybe I'm under aroused, right? Now I need to get some pump up music going, or move my body, or do some arousal induction strategies. So those are great mental skills. Relaxation, and arousal increasing strategies.
I'd make an argument most people probably live on the right side of that graph in the distress zone, and that's
100%.
we definitely, but like there, I don't feel like anybody lives in the middle. I feel like everybody's either bored and like in the low, like under aroused side, or they're over aroused and they're on the right hand side and they're just in a complete state of distress. I don't know who's in the middle. It's really hard
Yeah.
to be there.
If they are, then they practice a lot. They know when to turn it up or turn it down. Um, I think about, like, there's some real amazing athletes that are probably on the low end. Like, think about Michael Jordan, who
Mm.
needed to always be having like a game within the game to get himself ramped up,
Yeah.
right? There's another example in the basketball world, Bobby Portis Jr. He talks about how before games he used to visualize the opponents slapping his mother in the face to get him riled up, right? So he needed that arousal induction, whereas most of us we're ready to go, maybe even too anxious, too aroused, too stressed. We need to actually come down. That's my experience, that of the majority of people I've worked with, that they need more relaxation strategies.
Or like Bobby Boucher from Waterboy, where you had to picture like his high school teacher, his coach,
Yeah.
or his mother.
Yeah. That's a pretty good one. I think you see it a lot, especially in hockey, where guys are just in too much of a state of distress, and that's where they take like really bad penalties or they take runs at guys. And
Mhm.
you're like, oh man, it's so stupid. But it's really nothing to do with like mental capacity. It's just a matter of like them being in too much stress, I suppose.
Yeah, and when your emotions are that high and your arousal levels that high, naturally your thinking brain's going to shut off.
Hmm.
And that's where we make really stupid decisions and do dumb things.
Yeah.
That could also wrap around identity and values too. They might identify as that enforcer, right? And that's their job, is to just go smash someone up. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
true.
Can we go back to, you were talking about processes, like process goals?
Mm-hmm.
Going back to process goals, as you started saying that, I started thinking about the genesis of our show, and a lot of it is like a lot of people's stories do come from reaching or like going through a series of process goals along the way. Like I know for me, that's what mine was. Like not being able to walk, being in the hospital, and starting off just with a simple like I'm gonna walk to the end of my driveway. I'm gonna walk to the stop sign. I'm gonna walk the to the corner, whatever. And it was just a series of process goals that got me back into being able to walk and eventually exercise and stuff like that. And all those process goals gave me hits of dopamine and excitement and stuff like that. I still did have the end goal of like I want to get back to normal. I still have that end goal. But the process goals were critical for the evolution to that.
Yeah. And even, like chiro and physio, and you're doing your exercises and your stretches, like those can all be those tied into those process goals. And I think especially with injuries, like you have a lot of time, like if for athletes anyways, if they're not playing, they might not be with the team. For you, I'm not, if you were working or not working, like you have a lot of time to think. And so having more structure, more routine is really helpful for recovery as well.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of work with injured athletes?
When they are here, so oftentimes the athletes for one of the hockey teams I work with, when they're injured, they may be away for 2, 3, 4 months. Like we had one athlete who had a really significant injury last year, and he was gone for half the season. So then it's trying to connect them with people in their communities, or maybe doing some remote work, helping them set some of those process goals. And you can do a lot of mental skills training when you're not playing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good opportunity to work on visualization and imagery, and that can really help with healing as well and recovery. And self-talk, we kind of mentioned around self-talk and being injured, that can be a time where you're really noticing, you have a lot more awareness because there's just less stimulation, less things keeping you busy. So it's a good time to kind of just tune into what's my inner dialogue, what am I saying to myself. So you can do a lot of great self-reflection work, building in things like journaling and different goal setting strategies. I think the mindset piece, this is probably where we could talk about that. I think there's really three core components of a solid mindset. So we've already talked about one, which is the process and ties into goal setting, but just trying as much as you can to focus on the process versus the results. So every day, Corey, if you looked at your bank account and you're like, I'm not at that $1,000,000, your motivation just gets sucked away over time to the point that you probably just stop doing anything to get closer to that goal versus focusing on the process. What can I do today to get 1% better, or to get 1% closer to where I want to be? So that's, in my mind, that is a core component of a solid mindset. The second part of it, we've kind of talked about, I think we talked about it last episode, is the growth mindset, right? Where injuries, not being able to walk, failures, mistakes, these are the ways that we grow and learn and evolve. We have to embrace those. We have to embrace the failure. And it sucks in the moment. And I don't think it's something you can rush through. So when you really injured yourself and you couldn't walk, you couldn't be in that moment, be like, you know what, this is going to be really great for me. I'm going to learn so much and grow so much from this. So
Yeah,
there's a
you got to
period
kind of
of,
you almost hit like rock bottom, and then you grow from there.
yes,
Yeah.
you got to go through the emotions, go through the suck of it. And you can't rush that or force that. So that's its own process. But once it's over, if it's a mistake, it's a lot quicker, right? You make a mistake in game and it's like, give yourself, 5-10 seconds to beat yourself up, to do whatever you typically do, but then you're resetting. And there's some techniques for that. So the growth mindset is super, super important for a total solid mindset. And then the third piece is to, as much as you can, bring your focus back to what you have control of. forget about the things you don't have control of. Those, I mean, that's where our brain tends to go to, right? All the things we don't have control of. But this is where self-awareness, self-talk, focusing on these areas is going to help you to discard that as quickly as you can.
It's one of the hardest things to do is to, I mean, it's part of stoicism, right? Is to worry about what you can control. But yeah, I think it's human nature to worry about a lot of things that you can't control. I know I've definitely been guilty of this. And I think almost everybody is when it comes to certain topics.
100%.
What do you do for that when you're somebody who just is worrying about the things that you can't control?
I think I'll write down lists with people, like what is within your control. And for athletes, sometimes it's not very many things. It could be my effort and my attitude. Those are two big ones. My recovery, what I do in my off days, what I put in my body. What else?
Yeah.
Not a lot, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then we're, coming up with the list right there for people that have never thought about this. It really helps. So then we'll also do a list of what are the things out of my control. So like the referees, the weather, the bus, my coaching, like the coach's decisions, the other team, my line mates, like so many things. The staff I work with every day. So then those just become a reminder that you can revisit every day. Okay, what do I have control of? Go through the list, discard the rest. And then I think just through practice and repetition, that becomes more of a habit. But that's one strategy for that for sure.
One of the things I've noticed as I've started to get better at not worrying about, what I have no control of is as you do it over a longer period of time, you do start to notice improvements in a lot of areas of your life. Because you're basically stacking up like micro victories every day by focusing on being good at what you can control and just not really worrying about what you can't. And I'm sure Corey probably feels the same in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you and I with this show, even we've really found a way to, I mean, there's so many uncontrollables in this world. It's like, there's, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there that we're competing against. Right. But the one thing that we get all the time about this show, and I do attribute most of this to Josh, is like consistency. Like we're just consistently putting out content. And we get people all the time asking us, like, how do you guys put out this much stuff? And the truth is we've found a way to schedule it and a way to be efficient with it. And we've just found ways to work around that. Now, my business, I find it to be harder for some reason to find those consistencies. And maybe it's because Josh isn't driving it. maybe that's I need a Josh in my business to drive my business for me.
I'm the most consistent person, I guess. No, you know why I think we've been able to do it in the podcast? It'd be the consistent. This is what I tell people when they ask me, like, how are you able to do this every day? Because I don't look at how they do. Maybe I'm guilty of committing the cardinal sin in social media, but I don't really ever look at how videos perform. I might check it out. Like you might send me something like, oh, this did really bad. Be like, oh, geez, what happened there? Or like this did exceptionally well. I'll be like, oh, cool, good. What did we do right? It's really the only time I look at it. But like on a day-to-day basis, I don't really look at how we did. And I think that's part of what allows us to keep going is the fact that we're looking at the process goals and not some major, like we want to have 1 million subscribers eventually, which, we do have that goal, but we're not really thinking about it on a day-to-day basis because I think we would have stopped a long time ago because we wouldn't have seen the improvement. We would have stopped in the first 3 months of the show when we had 36 subscribers and 0 people watching or listening. Yeah, it would have been done then because, we just wouldn't have committed ourselves the way that we did.
Well, and I think for you guys, like from what I see, you guys really love doing this. Like you're passionate about it. You have fun with it. You enjoy, ribbing each other and just all of it, right? It's you love the process because you're doing something that you love.
Yeah.
I'm going to push back on that because, like, yes, we do love it, especially the interviewing. Like, I love this. Like, I like being on here and doing this, but what's getting us ahead is actually doing the suck. It's like
Yeah.
doing the shitty stuff that you got to be consistent at, like the behind the scenes, the editing, the putting it up on YouTube and all the platforms. And, we got to write scripts. We got to do all these things that are kind of like just time consuming, sucky things to do. This is the fun
Yeah.
part, but it's
Right.
actually like maybe 10% of the whole business.
Yeah, trying to book guests is really not fun. Trying to
Yeah.
get people to come on the show, not fun. Writing the show notes, not fun. Yeah, there's lots that's not enjoyable. I think you are right too, because a lot of people look at podcasting and they go, "Oh, that'd be really fun to do," and they'll do the podcast and then it doesn't do anything, and they're like, "Ah, I did 4 episodes and nothing happened. That's the end of it." But like the part that does set you up if you want to succeed in what I think is the toughest industry is doing the shitty stuff, doing the stuff that you really don't want to do, and you got to do it every day.
Working in the dark. That's where the bulk of the work happens. And I think that's, I know we talked a lot about this on the last one around social media, but I think that's really pulled us away from focusing on the process and on doing the dirty work in the dark that no one likes to do. Because everybody just wants to show off the outcomes, the end results.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're all craving.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what you were talking about with business. It's like, scheduling those call leads and different things like that. Like that's the suck, but that's the part that's going to get you ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, that's the things that I need to start focusing on, because I'm in kind of a bit of a glamorous business where I do get to see like really cool outcomes from it. Doing video production, I get to see these like really awesome end results, and you do have a lot of people going, "Hey, that was like really cool, that thing that you did," and the businesses are excited about it. But yeah, you got to find a way, or I got to find a way to start loving the process and this kind of suck of it, I guess, and getting results from that being the definer for what feels good.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think made me think of, we don't celebrate our successes enough either, the little ones.
That's true.
And I think that can really kill motivation, is you're just waiting for this big shiny outcome. But what about all the wins that you had on the way there?
Mm-hmm.
And setting those, maybe some milestones up for enjoying your hard work and celebrating it.
I remember Josh saying this to me one time. This was a long time ago. Maybe you don't remember, Josh, but I remember I was complaining one time. I was like, "Oh man, this business, like it's a lot of work and blah, blah, blah." And he said to me, he's like, "Yeah, but like right now you're sitting on the 4th step and you're looking up saying, I want to be at the top of the staircase, but you're forgetting not to look back and go, oh, I don't want to be at that first step again." Right. Do you remember saying that, Josh?
Yeah.
Something along those lines. But I do think about that often. It's like, I don't want to go back to, the thing that I was doing before this. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So
and that was the first step.
You do got to learn to feel good and celebrate those successes for sure.
Back to gratitude, I think, too. Being your own boss, making your own schedule, some of those little things that over time you just start taking for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. Flexibility, like being able to schedule my time and do things with my kids and things like that my wife can't do because she's working, a full-time job that she can't, even take a break to pee sometimes. Like, so, yeah, there's definitely those things that I do take for granted. So,
yeah, we as a society are completely guilty of this, where you kind of hit, like when you climb up a ladder, you sort of forget that there were steps below you to get there. And you just think like, well, this is my life now. This is where my baseline, or whatever you want to call it. And it's easy to forget and not, like you were mentioning, Matt, not have gratitude towards all the things you actually did, those stepping stones. And I don't know why we do that, but we do it. I'm guilty of it for sure.
Yeah, and I think I am too, right? You hit that big goal you had and you enjoy it for 2 minutes, and then you're like, okay, what's next?
Yeah, exactly.
We've said this quote many times. It's from Alex Ramosi, but he says, you've already hit goals that you said would make you happy.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. So trying to attain this like happiness Like, you're not going to hit something where you're just like, hey, I'm happy all the time now. I hit that goal and I'm happy every single second of every day. I'm happy now. That's just not
Mm-hmm.
going to happen. You gotta find joy in the process, and you also got to like realize that there's going to be bad times and things are going to just feel shitty at times, and maybe just don't get stuck in that.
Yeah, I've kind of reframed. Like I was pitching a expansion of a role that I have with a team last week, and they kind of asked me like, what's my goal? Where do I see myself in 5 years? And I think the best way I can put this right now is that I just want to be doing things that maximize my potential and leave everything I can out on the floor, so to speak. I just want
Hmm.
to take what I'm doing in my career to the absolute limit. I want to learn as much as I can, grow as much, make mistakes. That's all part of it, but I just want to maximize my potential. And that's pretty abstract, but there's a lot of like process things that stem from that for me.
A lot of purpose comes from that too.
Yeah, I'd say the majority of people aren't really living to their potential, and Josh and I have both talked about this many times that we've found ourselves in that too. Like, I'd say even now I'm not living up to my full potential, and that's a good point. Like, I don't know, the goal in life should be to just keep learning and live to your potential, and then ideally be able to take those learnings and pass it on to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a cool video. Maybe we could pop it in here. It's pretty long, but he talks about how goal setting, we've been taught goal setting all wrong.
When you ask people to set goals, even if you teach them methodologies like SMART, SMART goal setting, you are basically encouraging people to set goals based on that same culture scape with its restricting rules. So people, especially in the United States, set goals along the lines of this. Okay, we need to get good grades so I can graduate high school, so I can get into a good college, need to study hard to get a good GPA, so maybe I can go to graduate school, so maybe I can do well in my LSAT, that becomes the next goal, get into law school, the next goal, graduate from law school, get into a partnership, become a lawyer. And that's how teenagers often think about their life, these series of like ticks that they have to go through. But here's what happens. Let's actually look at that. Let's look at lawyers. 50% of lawyers in America are clinically depressed. It's not just the US. I think Australia did a similar study. So why are kids going into these professions where they end up in a job that they thought was a good goal at one point, only to find themselves absolutely miserable? It's because these goals aren't coming from inside us. They're coming from the culture scape. And the culture scape is basically a safety net mechanism. I suggest we ask ourselves 3 questions, and I call these the 3 most important questions. It's, what experiences do I want to have? It's crazy. We associate money with happiness, but often the most beautiful experiences in life require no money. Almost any human being today can fall in love, can make a baby. These are some of the most profound experiences I've had. So the first thing is you make a list of your experiences. Now the second thing is you ask yourself this question. For me to be the man or woman who has all of these experiences, how do I have to grow? Now you have 2 lists, your experiences and your growth. Now you ask yourself the third question, and the third question is this. To be that man or woman who has all of these experiences, to be that man or woman who has grown in such a way, how can I give back to the world? And there's a very important reason for that question. The Dalai Lama said, if you want to be happy, make other people happy.
And he says, why don't we just skip right to the outcomes that you want, but not just like, the fancy car and the white picket fence and the big house. The outcomes being, what experiences do you want to have in life?
Hmm.
And then you just reverse engineer from there. So if it's, I want to travel, or I want to, I want to have a family, maybe, right? Like there's steps to take to have those experiences. And then the shades of it evolve as you go.
That's really cool.
And
Yeah,
part of that, he breaks it down into, what do you want to give back to the world, or to the next generation, or to your kids? Like, what are some things that you want to leave behind? And I think that's valuable too.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot in recent weeks. We want
Legacy.
legacy, but also like we want a lot of this show to sort of speak to 20 somethings that are struggling with the things that we struggled with 20 years ago, because they really haven't changed. They've just, if anything, they've grown and become bigger issues, but the core is still the same of what the problems are. And we'd like to, reach some of those people. And if we can help even one, that would be cool.
Mm.
We've also talked about taking this show and using it to evolve into some things that we want out of our own lives too, like more travel, time with the family, maybe doing more in-person interviews, that kind of thing. Getting some higher profile guests as well. So those are all within our reach. It's just like, let's do the process to make those things happen.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, I love talking about legacy and thinking about that. Have you guys seen the Mike Tyson clip on that? Where,
No.
Or
this,
maybe I have.
You might have. It's just funny. It's like a girl, like a little girl interviewing him.
So after such a successful career, what type of legacy would you like to leave behind when it's all said and done?
Well, I don't know. I don't believe in the word legacy. I just think that's another word for ego. Legacy doesn't mean nothing. That's just some word everybody grabbed onto. Someone said that word and everyone grabbed on the word, so now it's used every 5 seconds. It means absolutely nothing to me. I'm just passing through. I'm going to die, and it's going to be over. Who cares about legacy after that? What a big ego. So I'm going to die. I want people to think that I'm this, I'm great. No, we're nothing. We're just dead. We're dust. We're absolutely nothing. Our legacy is nothing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That is something that I have not heard before, someone say that as an answer. So thank you so much for giving me that kind of idea as well.
Can you really imagine somebody say, I want my legacy to be this way when you're dead? Why do you want somebody to think? You think somebody really wants to think about you? What's the audacity? I think, I want people to think about me when I'm gone. Who the fuck cares about me when I'm gone? Well, my kids, maybe, or grandkids. Who the fuck cares?
And again, thank you so much for sharing that.
So it's the exact flipped opposite of what we're talking about here. But I think,
it's a good point though. Like he's probably saying like, no, I want to live my life to the fullest. I don't want to think about what it is after I'm gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Different
And there,
perspectives on that.
Yeah. There is a tie too between legacy and identity. Like your identity is sort of how you feel about, I guess, yourself when no one's watching or no one's around. Whereas like legacy is the opposite, right? It's how people feel about you when you're not around.
Mm-hmm.
So
interesting exercise in I haven't done this, but I have some friends who did some background in like grief work, grief and loss, mourning, education, and one of the exercises in the class was to write your own obituary.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting activity if you want to talk about legacy and identity and things like that.
Be depressing if you only wrote like one sentence. Like, fuck.
What would your sentence be, Corey?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that one. I can just spit it out here. That's
That's
sure.
tough. Yeah. I'd have to think for a while too.
Yeah. It gets you thinking though. What kind of life do you want to have?
Yeah.
What experiences? What do you want to give back? All those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could be cool too to write that from the perspective of someone else. Like someone else writing your eulogy or something like that. Like, I don't know, your mother or your wife or something like that. Like, what would they say about you?
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Maybe it would. Maybe it wouldn't.
We got a little off mental performance here, but I think we covered some grounds. I mean, the mental skills training is really important. We didn't spend a ton of time on that, but I mean, goal setting is a mental skill. So it's not just something that you have, it's something you have to work towards, writing it down, having it visible, coming back to it. You might have to recalibrate it. So that's a skill. Self-talk is a skill. There's confidence and motivation skills. Visualization is very important. So visualizing achieving your goals is one way of visualizing. You can also visualize obstacles and adversity that you might hit. So think about Michael Phelps used to visualize his goggles coming off. And then when he was in, I think it was Rio, that ended up happening. He didn't skip a beat because he had spent so much time visualizing that happening that he just kept racing and won gold.
Hmm.
I know Beyonce used to visualize like wardrobe malfunctions or their high heels breaking, things like that, right? But with that, when you're visualizing adversity or stress or mistakes, only spend about 20% of the time doing that. You want to have about 80% of your visualization be about how you're going to overcome it, or your best performances, the more positive, ideal situations that you want to be in. So kind of an 80-20 rule with that. I like to work with athletes and people on visualizing their own highlight reel. So spend some time, like if it's business, like go back in time, think about those amazing moments you've had, those successes, the wins when you did hit your goals. Spend some time there. And that builds up confidence. It reminds us why we're doing this, why we're putting in all this hard work. So that can bring back some of the passion, the motivation, the fun, just kind of center you in, what's the why for me.
Yeah.
And then arousal regulation, I think that's one of the most important mental skills. So we kind of talked about that with relaxation and induction. So getting to the middle of the be a 5, they say, out of 10. So how do you get there? You want to get there as quickly as you can. I'm kind of flying through these because I got to go in a couple minutes, but I think it's also important to have a mistake ritual. So something that you do after mistakes to reset your mind. And so this, in hockey, hockey's such a fast sport, right? So you need to reset within 3 to 5 seconds. But this could be the water on the face. This could be a mantra. This could be somewhere you look in the arena. This could be, quickly retying a skate or adjusting your gear. But you want to release the mistake. And sometimes that could be through like yelling or action or just some sort of a release. And
like
then you want to,
maybe like
what's
breathing exercises, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that I would. So I'd say that's kind of a 3-step process. So you want to release the energy, then you want to reset, and that's really where the breath work helps. And then the third step is the refocusing. So this is where maybe self-talk is like, all right, next shift or next call, right?
Okay.
So you want to refocus so your mind has an idea of what we're about to do again.
Okay.
That's cool.
Awesome. Yeah. We really appreciate you coming in again, Matt. And obviously, we want to make a ongoing thing of this if we can and have you on more often. So I'll send you that money for the bill that you're going to send me, and we'll do it again.
That sounds good, buddy.
Thanks a lot, Matt.
Yeah, it was great. I love chatting with you guys, and happy to do it again.
So thanks again for tuning in to Second Story. Flip the script, write your sequel. See you on the next one.